The French death toll from the coronavirus hovers near the 19,000 mark, but the head of the Public Health Authority says the ongoing lockdown is working, with the number of hospitalised cases declining for a third day running. There's a glimmer of hope for Germany. The health minister announces that the outbreak has become manageable there, with the rate of new infections slowing. Experts believe that the early and widespread testing of citizens has helped to lessen the blow. And the US president says Beijing still hasn't told the full truth about the total number of lives lost from the virus. This after the Chinese city where the pandemic first began revised its death toll by a massive 50%. Hello, I'm Thomas Waterhouse. This is the latest world news from Paris. We start this hour with those growing green shoots being reported here in France in relation to COVID-19. While a further 761 people have died from the virus, raising the total tally to over 18,600, the actual number of people being treated on hospital wards has fallen for a third consecutive day. And the number of patients in intensive care units has also tumbled for the 9th day in a row. The country's top health officials say that there is reason to be positive, but that the French nation shouldn't let its guard down just yet.
C'est ensemble, toutes et tous, que nous vaincrons cette pandémie et tous ses effets. Ne relâchons absolument pas ce soir nos efforts. Vous le voyez, le confinement commence à porter ses fruits. Il y a moins de patients hospitalisés, il y a moins de patients admis en réanimation. C'est une baisse lente mais régulière. Nous devons donc poursuivre nos efforts dans le confinement.
Well, staying with France, one sailor remains in intensive care and around 20 others are being treated for the virus in hospital. The Navy is still busy investigating how hundreds of personnel on board the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier tested positive. Julia Kim explains.
The pride of France's Navy immobilised. On board the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier and its supporting vessels, almost 1 in 2 sailors have tested positive for the coronavirus so far. With over 1,000 of its 2,300-member crew infected, 2 investigations have been launched into how the outbreak was allowed to spread. The first will focus on the stopover the Charles de Gaulle made in the northwest city of Brest. From the 13th to the 16th of March, sailors were able to spend time on dry land with family, just before a nationwide lockdown took effect on the 17th.
Nous ne savons pas encore si le virus était déjà présent à bord avant l'escale du 13 mars. L'enquête épidémiologique devra notamment répondre à cette question.
The second investigation will scrutinise the handling of the outbreak by the Navy's top brass. According to one sailor, the commander of the Charles de Gaulle had asked his superiors to cut short their deployment, but the request was denied. Not true, says Defence Minister Florence Parly, dismissing the story as a rumour. Navy officials were also quick to support her.
From the 4th or 5th of April, the number of infections increased exponentially. It was from this date that the commander decided to alert the chief of the Navy to suggest ending the operation, a decision which was immediately approved by the Defence Minister.
The Defence Minister says an initial report is expected on the 2 investigations within the fortnight.
Over in Germany, the recovery rate has been higher than the rate of new infections every day this week. The health minister has taken comfort from those figures to say that the outbreak there has now become controllable and manageable. That positive news means that the cogs controlling normal life will slowly start turning once again, with authorities praised for keeping the fatality rate low. Luke Schrago reports.
After a month in lockdown, Germany could now be about to see things ease.
Der Ausbruch ist Stand heute wieder beherrschbar und beherrschbarer geworden. Ich finde, eine sehr wichtige, ermutigende Zahl ist auch die, dass seit dem 12.04. täglich mehr Menschen genesen, als wir Neuinfizierte haben.
It puts Germany's transmission rate for the coronavirus at 0.7, and the nation on course to see some of the larger shops open from Monday, with certain children going back to school on May the 4th. The easing of restrictions is in no small part down to Germany's highly cautious approach to the pandemic. It tested and tracked for cases more and earlier than other worse-hit nations, which caught people with few to no symptoms. The country is now carrying out some 350,000 tests a week, having ramped up resources since day one. As a result, hospitals could act earlier, spreading cases out and keeping emergency rooms from being overwhelmed. Beyond massively ramping up intensive care infrastructure, from 28,000 beds in January to current levels of 40,000, a population that trusted its government and heeded advice has also proven vital.
Wenn wir jetzt anfangen sollten und wieder alles öffnen, ne, gerade auch Gastronomie, dann machen wir alles das, was wir gerade errungen haben, eigentlich wieder kaputt. Und wenn wir das wollen, können wir das tun, dann zahlen wir nochmal 150 Milliarden. Und das ist ein wirtschaftlicher Faktor. Letztendlich, ja, ich halte es für gut, obwohl ich selber auch betroffen bin. Ja, ist okay, vollkommen okay.
Germany has further plans too. Not only is it to manufacture 50 million surgical masks a week before loosening restrictions, authorities will be rolling out a new contact tracing app for smartphones in under a month and will soon begin clinically testing a potential new vaccine.
Next, the World Health Organization says it's likely that many countries will follow in the footsteps of China and revise their death tolls from this virus. On Friday, authorities in the epicenter city of Wuhan dramatically increased the fatality figures there by 50%. But the US President Donald Trump has agreed with the French and British leaders in claiming that Beijing still hasn't painted the full and accurate picture. Ellen Gainsford and Emerald Maxwell report.
Beijing denies a cover-up, but the Chinese government stands accused of downplaying the severity of its coronavirus outbreak. This Friday, the city of Wuhan revealed that its death toll was actually 50% higher than initially reported. Chinese officials say this is due to new data.
医疗机构未能及时与疾病预防控制信息系统对接，医院超负荷运转，医务人员忙于救治，客观上存在一些迟报、漏报、误报的现象，但从不存在瞒报，也不允许瞒报。
Several Western nations have criticized China's lack of transparency. Emmanuel Macron broached the issue in an interview with the Financial Times.
Vous ne pouvez pas comparer la situation de la France, de l'Allemagne, de l'Italie avec celle de la Chine ou de la Russie, c'est une évidence. Et la transparence qu'il y a, l'immédiateté de cette information n'a juste rien à voir. Les réseaux ne sont pas libres dans ces pays. Vous n'avez pas de réseaux sociaux. Vous ne savez pas ce qui s'y passe.
There are also clashes in opinion over the origins of COVID-19. Chinese scientists have said the virus was likely transmitted to humans at a Wuhan wet market, which sell and slaughter live and sometimes exotic animals on site. But the United States says it's probing whether the virus actually originated in a Wuhan laboratory. China denies the rumors. President Xi Jinping says efforts to blame Beijing are counterproductive and detrimental to international cooperation.
Well, staying with China, a wave of suspicion levelled at Africans living in the country has washed up there. Authorities in the city of Guangzhou say they've tested more than 4,000 people of African origin in the past week and that 111 of them have tested positive. Derek Thompson from France 24's Observers team has put together this next report.
Just 10 days after the quarantine was finally lifted in Guangzhou, rumours started circulating on social networks of a new outbreak of the virus in the city's African neighbourhood. Africans like this Nigerian student, whom we'll call Kingsley, told us local Chinese people started getting more and more suspicious of them, starting with landlords.
I think on Tuesday morning, my mate in my house, he went out to get something and I got a call from him. He's not been allowed entry to where we live. And he had to leave the premises. That very day, he slept outside. He was among, one of the people wandering around. You must have seen pictures and some videos. In the middle of the night, because I couldn't sleep through all the night, and he sent me a picture of where they were pushed to sleep by the police, which was an open place with no duvet, with nothing to lay on the floor.
Kingsley's roommate ended up spending 2 nights outside. He was allowed back into the building after being tested for the virus. But not everyone was so lucky. These men who'd come to China to do business were asked to leave their hotel.
We have been in quarantine for 14 days now. We don't know where they are taking us to.
Africans in Guangzhou no longer feel welcome. The sign outside this building says foreigners are forbidden to enter the community, especially black people. Kingsley sent us screenshots of conversations among Chinese residents of his building. One person writing, "If you can, really, do not rent to a black person."
We now sleep during the day, and all through the night you stay awake because it's more like sleeping with fear.
For the next 10 days, a 24-hour curfew has been imposed across conflict-hit Libya by the country's internationally recognised government. The North African nation's Centre for Disease Control says that there are now 48 confirmed cases of COVID-19 there and 1 fatality. With more, here's James Wilson.
Hours after the 10-day curfew in Libya was announced, markets were heaving with shoppers. It's only a few days before the beginning of Ramadan, and Libyans were keen to stock up for the holiest month of the Islamic calendar.
تفادي للزحمة في رمضان يعني واحد من الناس يعني في رمضان ما نطلعش واجد يعني للأسواق والواحد ما يتسوق ناخذ كل شيء قبل رمضان من اللحوم من الخضروات من التموين الجاف من كله.
From Saturday, people will be allowed to leave the house for essential purchases between 7 a.m. and midday, and they can only do so on foot. The lockdown is being implemented by the UN-recognised government in Tripoli, and as such only applies to the country's west. The east of Libya, ruled by General Haftar, will continue as normal. The nation has been ravaged by civil war since 2011, but the global pandemic has not led to a pause in hostilities. These images show soldiers loyal to Haftar, both ready for war and wearing masks to protect themselves from COVID-19. The World Health Organization has warned that the international community needs to take prompt action to avoid chaos.
Ce qu'on sait, c'est qu'on a vraiment une opportunité pour agir dans la région, parce que, comme je disais, l'ascension des cas n'a pas été rapide.
Last month, foreign governments appealed for a temporary end to fighting with a coronavirus truce. But so far, those calls have gone unanswered, hindering the distribution of humanitarian aid to ordinary citizens.
And finally, 3 people who weren't around when the pandemic took grip are now slowly getting accustomed to a world largely now under lockdown. After completing a mission to the International Space Station, the trio of astronauts and cosmonauts touched down in Kazakhstan shortly after 11 a.m. local time this Friday.
They're returning to a changed planet. 2 NASA astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut bid farewell to the International Space Station this Friday. They've landed in the midst of a pandemic, their recovery crews wearing face masks and rubber gloves to protect them from possible COVID-19 contamination. They'll have to forego embraces with family and friends as they adjust to the new normal of physical distancing. Andrew Morgan flew to the International Space Station last July, Oleg Shripochka and Jessica Mir last September. During her time on the ISS, Mir made history by taking part in the first all-female spacewalk, after which she was congratulated by the US president.
There have been many other female spacewalkers before us. This is just the first time that there have been 2 women outside at the same time.
The International Space Station is a rare example of cooperation between Russia and the West. It's been orbiting Earth at around 28,000 kilometers per hour since 1998. Now it's preparing to enter a new era. A crew from Elon Musk's SpaceX company should be arriving in May.
And that's all from me for this hour. Do stay with us here on France 24. Our world news coverage continues.